All right, welcome everybody to the Dev Talk Show here on August 2nd of 2023. I can't believe it's August, Rich.
Yeah, summer's just in the second half of it. So
Yeah, I feel like summer just started and I can't believe it's August. Wow.
yeah, it'll
So
be Christmas before we know it. I
I
know.
know, I know. That's crazy. So here we are on a Wednesday morning, just before 8 a.m. here on the U.S. East Coast. Hopefully, you're having a great day. And if you're watching us live right now on Twitch, or you happen to have caught the stream starting on Twitter and you headed over, or you're on YouTube, please don't hesitate to hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, and that way you'll know when we go live. If you're watching in the future on YouTube, let us know what you think about the topic, any questions you have, any advice you have, because one thing that you may have come to notice about this show is it isn't scripted, and we sometimes just try things out in front of you, which is a lot of what's happening today. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, always is. Always
Yeah.
is.
So on our last show, we got ASP.NET Core working from source, building from source, talking through the document on GitHub that explains how to get going there, and kind of gave my tips or experience. We didn't try to do it live because some of the build steps can take a while. Definitely varies depending on your machine. But tried to talk through like here's what I ran into. And so today we've got some decisions to make. We can go back to working with this in Windows Visual Studio. Also now working in Linux on my Linux Mint 20 VM, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so in that particular environment, I happen to be using Visual Studio Code. Would not have to use Visual Studio Code. The thing that I was trying to get really going is how do I get like a breakpoint debugging style experience, which is not, I mean, that's not required. And I think it would be really interesting to try and look into, what other tools, obviously Writer is another tool that you could use. I haven't said it much on this show. I don't even know if I mentioned it to you personally. I've kind of got, sometimes I just come up with these ideas and say, I'd really love to get something working this way. I'm kind of interested now in seeing if I can get a NeoVim environment going for .NET. I may have said it before. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. And so
that's
here's,
definitely new.
yeah, here's the thinking is, and there are folks that have already posted on this. There are some folks who've written some blogs. But the thinking is that even in .NET on Linux, I'm bringing up, a Linux VM, but it's still a graphical VM.
Sure.
What if I could say, oh, this is just a server Linux, and I SSH into it, and then I bring up tooling, and I go to work right there. That might be interesting.
Yeah.
So
And NeoVim is kind of interesting and I'm not sure if you knew about this. Right now there are 4 IDEs that GitHub Copilot will work in. And NeoVim is one of those 4.
Right.
Obviously,
Yep.
VS Code, Visual Studio, and JetBrains is the 4th.
Yep. That's exactly the thinking, I think,
Oh,
is
cool.
like, like you want a good experience. And I think, I don't know if this is good or bad. I think over the last maybe, gosh, it really has been about 30 years of debugging in IDEs and developers being used to setting breakpoints, inspecting memory, looking at the call stack. It's not that you couldn't do all these things from the command line. It's not that you couldn't with like a WinDebug, or even before they were graphical. I mean, when I used Turbo Pascal, it was graphical, but it was a text. It was still using console, right? Because it was ran in DOS. So while they were, those developers were heroes. While they were drawing windows and toolbars and so forth, there was a lot of function key work then. They wouldn't have like the toolbar at the top, but they were doing all of that just in the DOS console.
Okay.
It was still very graphical. You could still hit a breakpoint. It would set. You would still hit there, and then you'd go from there. But I really feel like those developers were absolutely heroes. So, you know, then again, when I moved to graphical, for me was Windows 95. I didn't do a whole lot of
Okay.
Windows 3.1 graphical, but when I moved, I thought I said like, wow, I can't believe anybody does this. This is so because I've having spent like, my early life just writing console apps.
Yeah.
So, so anyways, what should we
And
do? Go ahead.
I was just going to quip that, now we're writing AI apps. So it's kind of,
Yes.
we continue to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and present my other screen here. And I've made a few changes to my terminal. I know most my Posh themes are well known for being using like reverse video. Gosh, that's what we used to call it in the console days, when you put like a black text or a white text on a colored background.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of reverted things back, as you can see. Still going with color, but I've just decided I think I'm gonna try this for a while, where if I maybe move into I'm getting my Git information here,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been slowly taking the different segments and moving them to a more traditional.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's harder to read. It's hard to say. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You've got the file location. What's the first one there? The first
So the
icon?
first one is just telling me that I'm an administrator.
That's
all that's doing. Like if I open Windows Terminal again and I bring it over, no
It's
administrator.
not. Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
all
that
that's
one.
telling me. Then the next one is it's a truncated file path, and I mean this has been okay. There's a little thing that you you don't have to do. Like if I revert to my what in Windows is my home directory, then I get a little home.
Ah.
And that's kind of cute. In Windows, your home directory is generally it's users and then your username. So, but when you're there, you get your little home, and then I could say like, okay, let's go to source, which I don't really know that I have a whole lot in here. It's weird on Windows. I tend to still on Windows. I find myself still putting a source folder at the root of the drive.
Yeah.
It's weird about habits, because if we go onto my Linux VM, I put source in my home folder.
Okay.
I have no explanation for why I do one or the other. It just is what habits, I suppose.
Everybody gets, you build those conventions that work for you.
Yeah. The other thing I discovered with I just recently discovered is in Oh My Posh, there's really powerful text manipulation built right in. So previously, I know a lot of people know that I like to put the current Azure subscription that I'm logged into with the Azure CLI. I like to have that pop up, but some of those subscription names can be really long.
Yeah.
So I found that I can tell it I only want so many characters and then ellipsis it after that. And I go, well, that's fine, because it's enough for me. Like that's enough. I know what subscription I'm in.
Yep. Usually you can tell.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch us to our other. I have to do some switching here. Whoop. Now we move over and then take the branding out. So that's not automated. That's a manual process for me on StreamYard. Maybe I can figure out how to automate it sometime. So
there is Stream Deck integration now, so that should be able to help.
There is. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We have ASP.NET Core, and here it is. And if I do a git status on it, I think we're going to see that it thinks it's up to date, which is true because I haven't fetched in a while. Now, many folks, you might be using tools that automatically fetch. I know that my favorite tool, Git Kraken, will do that. Although here I am, I tend to go turn that off. but many tools will do that. They'll auto fetch from your origin repo, which in my case, there's another reason why I think my origin, no, actually no. So the origin in this case is my fork of the ASP.NET Core repo, which isn't a bad place to start. If you forget to do that, it's not the end of the world. And that's something that I think it's helpful for a lot of Git developers to know. Maybe we'll do another Git show on it, is that if you're so excited that you clone from the original source, and then you just go ahead and get to work. And if you ever said to yourself, like, oh no, I didn't fork this, so what do I do? Like, well, you can fork it, then add the new remote, make, and then make your have your new branch track your remote, which with your username, and continue the workflow that is encouraged up front, which is, I think a lot of people who are teaching you how to work on open source on GitHub or anywhere, Bitbucket, doesn't matter, will say, make sure you fork first, because otherwise your clones are pointing to the original repo and you won't have commit rights there. All true. But you can repair it after the fact.
Yeah.
So I think that's the step a lot of people don't take.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to set yourself up with that foundation to begin with.
Sure. So last night I went and double checked where my ASP.NET Core repo was in relation to Origin. Not Origin, I'm sorry. The official ASP.NET Core repo from the .NET organization up on GitHub. And I think when I do this fetch, we're going to see that it's going to say like, so I synced it on GitHub, which is a feature that I love. You can do now. You can click a button and it syncs it on GitHub. In the old days, I used to have to teach people how to do that manually. And now you can see that it's saying like, well, now you're 178 commits behind.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I could pull those, but and if I just go to Git status, we'll see that syncs up. And so once again, here is my Posh just giving me that information, which is it's helpful. I think I'm not going to sync it up, because then we'd have to do a build. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to start Visual Studio. But the interesting thing here is last time I picked, so the way you start working on Visual Studio, ASP.NET Core source, is you're probably not going to open the repo from here. I mean, you can, but you're probably not going to. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to pick like, what module do you want to work on? And this is where it's gotten difficult for me, because now I'm playing the game of, I want to work on something. What module is it in? And that's been interesting to try to figure out.
Okay.
Then it's easy to get overwhelmed and say, well, I don't know, where should I start?
Right. And is there some kind of a mapping or something to basically, kind of work backwards and figure out how to define the thing is that you might be interested in working on?
So, with apologies to the team if I am just flat missing this, I don't believe there's anything documented. Instead, what I think you might do is I think what you might end up doing is you might start, one way is to go to like a language reference and say, okay, let's say I wanted to work on something in Blazor. Not that I'm 100% sure what that would be at this time. And if I go to components and we say, okay, well, we know that in a new Blazor app, well, like this, some of them seem obvious. For example, there's a Signal R folder that seems obvious, but I started wondering, like, does that mean Blazor is in components? Because it might be. But then the question was, okay, does this mean that what I want to do is take a look at, try to figure out where something is? And if we say like modify a component, see, what I'm looking for is maybe a using statement. It might be easier to just go ahead and open one of these, because I have other ones on my machine. Let's get another terminal going. And let's see, I'm pretty sure, there's Blazor app, the one we've been working on, right?
Yeah.
And I should be able to go to source. Oops. Should be able to go to source And then, yeah, I'm gonna do this. One thing I didn't point out is that in Oh My Posh, when you set this path segment, you can make it clickable. So in Windows Terminal, I have to control click here.
Really?
And then what it
Oh, that's
does,
wild.
yeah, and like let me control click on this Blazor app, and it opens up Windows Explorer.
Huh.
Kind of neat.
That is cool.
But in any case, let's fire up this solution. I don't know that I was just double checking. I think I want preview, although it probably doesn't matter. Basically what I'm looking for is how does somebody drill down to what to do next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we say that we have a counter razor page, we say, okay, well, what is the button component? Well, it's Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components Web Event Handlers. So is that where I head to? And this might be the answer.
Right. I mean, if that folder structure is laid out like the
right
object reference, then we're
right.
good.
The other thing I suppose I could do is I could see if I could just find this button. I wonder what happens if I hit F1 here. Man, when was the last time I did this inside Visual Studio Code? Oh, it says help not available. So that was good. That was a good try. Let's go back here. I'm sorry, did you have a suggestion? I might have.
No.
Okay. No, we're learning together here. No doubt about it. So if I go to components and we look in here, there's web. Look in here. There's source. And
binding web.
Right. It makes you wonder. Now, there wasn't a start VS from in here. So let me back up one or two. So we're sitting in components. There is a start VS in here.
Okay.
And when you're using Visual Studio, you start it from start V. Oh, actually, I haven't activated. I haven't done the most important thing yet, which is great if you're joining us and didn't see this previously, is after you have followed the setup, all the setup instructions on the repo, which are pretty good. We talked in the last video about places where it's not that the instructions were incorrect, just maybe didn't give me that complete feeling, and so I still stumbled around a little bit. I have to activate it because if I do a .NET list SDKs right now, the current build 8, what we're working on, is not in here. So
interesting. Okay.
So in the source root, in the root of the repo, there is an activate script. There's PowerShell version and a version that'll work in Bash in Linux, maybe even other shells too. And so I type activate. That should be all I have to do. Although, let me double check real quick if I'm trying to remember now if you have to do something in PowerShell. I think you do. So it's good that we're in a way that we're refreshing this stuff here. Let me see. So I'll just show everybody what this looks like. I'm at the repo, github.com/.net/ASP.NET Core. And here is the build ASP.NET Core source code README.
Can you zoom in a little bit more on that?
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I sometimes I forget.
I'm
usually pretty good about it, but I forgot this time. So activating is, yes, this little interesting thing. Note the leading period followed by a space. I haven't looked into what that's about. I see that a lot in Linux too. I think it's kind of like saying like execute this in a way. So that was the trick, is if I would have just hit activate, it wouldn't have done what I wanted. So instead we're going to say act. And I'm still not 100% sure where some of this IntelliSense is coming from. If it's coming from I'm calling it IntelliSense, but see how PowerShell just wanted to give me the answer?
Yeah.
And then what I do, if you've never tried this, is I hit the right arrow to just finish it. Yeah, which is a little different from some places where you're used to hitting tab for completion. That doesn't do it, because tab already has a meaning in PowerShell, which is like find the next best guess.
Right.
So if I had said that if I just want to look at the contents of global JSON, I could type glow and then hit tab and I get a pretty good guess, and great, I printed it out. But this is more of a, hey, help me. What do you think I'm probably doing here? And it's like, oh, you're probably running Activate PS1. So I hit the right arrow, boom. And in PowerShell, at least, you get this nice helper. This kind of is like a nice reminder, in my opinion, that you're in this activated world where ASP.NET Core has been redirected to to the directory that you've built this from. So we've redirected the environment variables. The way I know that is if I go do a .NET List SDKs again, there's only one active. Yeah. So now that we've done all that, I can head into the source, head into components, which is where we think. And then in each of these subfolders, you're going to find a start VS command, which is, if you want to use VS for this, is what you want to use. And it's going to fire up Visual Studio. It's happening in another window. You know, I have no idea. Let me see. I actually think what's interesting is that it won't let me, Visual Studio will not let me do my window switch trick until it gets past a certain modal dialog.
Okay.
I think what's happening there is I think Visual Studio, for some historical reason, probably isn't updating the window for like a brief period of time. And there's probably some history to this. And so what happens is I try to use my trick, because this is the monitor over here is actually my primary monitor. So everything's opening over here and I'm having to drag it over.
Gotcha.
But that's okay. No big deal. So here we are in components. Oh, actually, we're not in components, are we?
I mean, components are there.
Yeah, components is here. I did say start VS from. Okay. So they have a sample Blazor server app in components. Okay. So this is promising. And if I say components, what I might do now is search Solution Explorer. I don't know if button's going to be way too granular. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. There's some tests here. Oh, I see. This is just basically getting things going. So yeah, figuring out exactly where the button is. I wonder if I could figure it out from a test. That might be interesting. I don't know, because I don't know what I would. This isn't the thing. The interesting thing about Blazor is this isn't like another point where I go to some code that I want to write, and then maybe I use the debugger to step into it. So I just don't know that answer. Let's see. We have a Blazor United app. We have a Blazor server app that are in samples. And then let's see. This is a test. Okay, great. But when I'm back in the ASP.NET Core Components Quick Grid, ASP.NET Core Components Forms test, maybe it's in Forms. In Forms? No, it doesn't look like it. What I'm trying to figure out is, no, go ahead if you have an idea here.
There's there's that control control comma, I think, and it will let you find if you're looking for a class.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring up Studio here locally because I thought that was still a thing.
ASP.NET Core Components Server feels promising. What I'm going to do is collapse this. I made it way too big. So components. The other thing that I considered was, so we have components, and then we have ASP.NET Core components, and then we have shared. Not a whole lot in there. Routing, render tree, rendering. But I started wondering, okay, I know that there's Microsoft ASP.NET Core components. So what if I head back to the documentation and I come here, or even just here I am in GitHub, and I say, okay, Microsoft ASP.NET Core components, and then I say like button. Is I get, do I get anything that helps me? Column base, names, paginator, mouse event arcs, namespace components, web, rendering, forms. So hold on, this is in forms input radio. So components, web, source, forms, input radio. That's interesting. Components, web, forms. Okay. Getting there, I think. It's also possible that I'm barking up a tree, like I'm looking for button when it's like, well,
it's not really. Yeah, I mean, input might be the more right, because underneath isn't it just an input control?
Right. Well, maybe.
At least, well, yeah, HTML versus what we're doing here in ASP.NET.
Sure.
True.
So here, though, here's an input text. And now we can actually look and see, here's the source code for input text. And I love this kind of stuff. I love this. This is almost equivalent to a Razor file containing, I mean, isn't this great to kind of see, like, we don't presently have the ability to compile those files within this project. Developers building their own input components could use Razor syntax. That's cool to just see, like, what they have to do to get this done. Try parse value from string. So the interesting thing is to say, like, is it worth the time to try to see something in here, or is it more about like, well, let's go, find an issue, see if you can work on that? This is tough, I think, trying to figure out how to get involved in a large project like this.
Yeah. I like I mean, unless you have something that you want to address or fix, I like the idea of saying, well, the community's kind of curated thoughts on what needs to happen, and the project team has probably looked at those and said these would make good places for people to start. I think
Yes. No, I
going
agree.
down the issue path is the way to go.
Yep. So I'm going to run the Blazor server app sample and just see if it hits any of these breakpoints when building the render tree. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. We'll go start taking a look at issues. Oh, there were build errors. Yay.
Didn't expect that.
Well, I kind of was. Falling back to checked and copy. I was fortunate with the HTTP one. I wonder, enable Node.js. That's odd. I thought I had all that going. I wonder if part of the issue is that I have to build this. That seems like that'll take a while. It would be nice if it built without an error, though. Wouldn't that be something? Okay, so let's open up GitHub. Issues. Oh, wow, look at that. Blazor input sets wrong select option. Okay. Let's I actually have this narrowed, so I'm gonna get rid of that narrowing and head back to the main repo and say we have issues, and then we know that they have some labels that are helpful here, such as, it's gonna be easier if I type good first issue. They say good for newcomers. And they say, like, okay, checkbox tag helper ignores a form attribute when hidden input is generated. Okay, it's possible that somebody's already worked on this, but we could see with the following code, they get a hidden field, and then let's see, however, the form attribute, which should point to the ID of the submission form, is missing. Now, what I don't know is that somebody may have already worked on this. Yeah, looks like this. There's a pull request. So the interesting thing here is I wonder if we can learn from this pull request. This person figured out to go to MVC tag helpers and then find the input tag helper. Okay. They moved this to the backlog probably because, 3 weeks ago is probably .NET 8's coming soon. So I imagine there's a cutoff. But let's see what happened in this pull request. So we got a new form name attribute. And if form name is not equal to null, then make sure we copy that attribute out. And then some other logic here that looks clearly to make the hidden field work. Okay. It's interesting. I don't know. Do we want to go back and look for an issue here? This is an interesting part. It's one thing to find an issue, right? And then it's another to say, I think I can actually work on this. Let me see. I haven't seen you in a while. Are you muted? You're not muted, are you?
Oh, yes, I was. How did that?
Oh, because I haven't heard you for a while. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I've been following along because I think you're with you driving and kind of walking through the issues and things here. I'm just trying to see if there's something that pops out. I mean, you're the one who needs to pick an issue that I think you can feel confident that you can address, I think.
Well, yeah, and that's a tough part as well.
Right.
It's one thing to say, I want to get to know the code. Let's see. A lot of these that say one task done probably means that maybe someone's done this. I mean, I suppose you could double check. I love how Steve Sanderson himself opened this one. And I'm still not 100% sure. Well, okay. Interesting.
What's that?
So this is Steve Sanderson himself saying in JavaScript interop, add overloads that use span. I suspect how cool is that? Is that actually quite a while ago he said, wouldn't it be nice if we got rid of an allocation by using span when in the past you use parameters? Okay, it's a little bit beyond me. I mean, maybe not. Maybe not with some looking into it, but I don't actually JS interrupt in Blazor I'm not familiar with. So
gotcha.
One task done. HTTP context request aborted no longer works. Oh, well, this is interesting. Unable to build from command line. I don't know that that's true anymore. I don't know. When using a query string with Blazor apps, the default nav item is not selected.
Is there, I mean, just looking at when those issues were opened,
right.
Some of them we're getting into the point where those issues are like 2 years old.
Right.
How, is, I guess, how confident are we that, it's it's a solvable issue because people keep pushing it off, or
right. That's a sign, right?
Yeah, something that may have already. Well, I would think if it already got included elsewhere in one of the subsequent releases, that it would have been come back and marked, no longer an issue.
Right. So, like a lot of these near the top that have been opened recently, you can imagine that a lot of people find these. In fact, that's what happened here with Modix's one. Is found the issue and said, look, I already have an idea. So the quick grid, add an overscan count parameter. And then the person who wrote it said, hey, here's what I'm seeing. And then I even would like to make a contribution. And Oh, but there's only, I don't see a pull request here. But then the person, but I think they're assigned because it said like one task. So
Yeah.
let's see, have they, no, it says no one assigned. That's interesting. Opened it last month, said they'd like to contribute. So in that case, this is another case where you say to yourself, like, well, I don't know that I want to jump on this one because it's funny how you make these judgment calls. It's only been a month. They seem to want to do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if
And
it's
I'm
been
sure
6 months?
And I'm sure at some point the bot comes back and says, "Hey, this is an open issue. Where are you?"
Maybe. Let's see.
And then that
Blazer.
one task done.
Right.
What does does that mean it's a quick fix, or does that mean there's a task in here that's already marked as completed?
That's the thing, is where are the tasks?
Yeah.
So here I am in the issue. It says one task done. I can't click on this.
Okay.
Like there was nothing I could click on to see what the tasks were.
Yeah.
Um,
And I didn't. I mean, an issue's an issue. There's no. I mean, unless that feature, there's, as far as I know, there's no way to sub issue.
Yeah, right.
And create tasks.
Oh, I see. It looks like what ended up happening is this person was saying, hey, so I have a problem. Blazor error UI is showing up. These messages are showing up in search results. Maybe there could be a hidden attribute. And then this person wrote back and said, you can use data no snippet, and then maybe add it in the documentation and a default template. Can I do a PR? But I don't know this. Oh, mentioned in this other issue. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. So tried to do it this way. Tried to do it with a commit to the templates, I guess, but then it would be interesting. You know, it feels like you would kind of have to reach out and say, like, okay, so I'm looking at this other issue where this person said, well, I'm going to solve the problem with by adding this data no snippet right into the templates.
Okay.
And the team declined to take it, partially because I think they were thinking they might redo the templates. So it almost begs the question of, okay, well, this is still listed as help wanted, good first issue. What is it exactly? What exactly do you think makes sense for the issue? Since modifying the templates was not accepted.
Right.
Is this a documentation fix? I wonder now when I look at files changed, were docs updated in here? I think docs might be a different repo. No, just code. Okay. That was in January, so that's been a while.
Yeah.
I wonder if it makes sense to just ask that question. I don't know if I want to say, because I'm sure they hear it all the time, is, oh, I might be interested in looking at this. I mean, how many times a day do they get that? And then the person never comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I think it's interesting, here we have somebody open an issue
Mm-hmm.
on, isn't it fun to play detective on this stuff? Somebody opened an issue on January 27th. This person said, hey, if you use data no snippet, it solves the problem, and even linked as to why the robot honors that.
Mm-hmm.
And then tried saying, well, let's add it to templates, and said, no, we're going to wait. No, the no was in the other pull request. And then really the bot came along and said, like, we're going to move this to .NET 8 planning. So I feel like, I don't know. Let's see. We'll find out.
Yes. Might not happen in this show. Might not
No,
happen.
right. Okay, so Blazor error shows up in search results. Fine. And then what other ones maybe looked interesting? There was already a pull request here. We'd already looked at this one where they said I might be interested in fixing it. Extend quick grid with ID and style properties. Blazor value cannot be null. What is that about? It even says triage. Like, it's got so many labels on it. It must be ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. So yeah, a lot of people have, somebody has created a test for it.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like, and I mean, honestly, I don't know enough about this issue. I'd probably have to work out, like, okay, this is the case where maybe you make a little sample app that shows it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Because,
thinking.
yeah, just for myself, right? To say, like, okay, I totally get the issue now.
Right. So yeah, because and then it also gives you the platform to then to see how the fix might impact that app that you wrote. So that would make sense.
Because this person even has it figured out to where, okay, get hash code for a null field name is blowing up. Fine. Get hash code itself is likely, if they're saying the error message isn't helpful, value cannot be null. Okay, fine. That's most likely coming straight out of get hash code.
Yeah.
Just a plain old, like, sorry, this can't be null. What am I going to hash if it's null? So then, for example, this person is saying, okay, how would I create a test case for this? And then created a edit form, and then editor one value. Oh, I see. And then editor one is a component where clearly this blows up. But I feel like, okay, so we can watch it blow up. The question now, I think, is what is the unit test? Maybe go find this code. So when field name here is null, we probably don't want to get to the place where we're already going to string compare get hash code. It could be that we're jumping up here and saying, okay, well, look, if this is null, then we really don't even want to get this far.
Right.
With a better error message. So that's interesting. I think it's interesting that this has been listed as, so somebody has come through here and said, hey, well, this person obviously, and said, I think we should ask for help on this. And a lot of times they do say, like, talk to us about what fix you're proposing.
Yeah. Yeah, before you go through the the complexity of writing it, getting it, pull requesting it, it's good to talk through what that solution is, just like you would, if you were doing this internally.
Yep. Now, this is interesting, this last one. that says added a commit to their own. Oh, I see. So he's got this person has their own commit. I have to head over to their repo, and they're doing kind of, I guess, what you would expect, is to say, if it's null, then it's interesting though. If it's null, instead of just throwing an argument null exception, to add some text that says, okay, let's get the name of the field, make that a little bit, the field name cannot be null, please provide a valid field name. So yeah, there's some work being done here. Interesting that this was not submitted. This person did this on their own, but not submitted as a pull request.
Yeah.
And did it back in May.
And I'm guessing there was no other conversation after this, because this would be almost like, hey, this is how I see fixing it.
Yep. Is this the person that opened it? No, just wondering. Not the person that opened it. Okay, well, somebody in their own repo worked on it, and then unfortunately, I suppose people get busy. We didn't hear much more. So yeah, finding an issue is just as much a part of the fun as fixing the
getting
issue.
It running was, yeah.
Right. Okay, well, this is cool.
Yeah.
A little beyond me, but there's definitely some merged pull requests.
So they've started to fix the issue, whatever it was. It looked like there were a lot of places where they needed to apply whatever the fix was.
Okay, and then yeah, something happened here where notice the issue has an activity, can't work on it anymore. So now this other person is now jumped in. So it's on its way.
Okay.
And then I know Safia, at least from some videos, a member of the team.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, the video that I referenced last time, she's in there talking about working on source from code spaces.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, she opened it up in code spaces and worked from there. After, if I remember correctly, I don't exactly remember the order. I think Damien showed off his machine and like compiled the entire source in on his machine in like less than a minute or less than even 10 seconds, and everybody said like they all had envy.
Yes.
And then David Fowler, if I remember correctly, said, well, I use VS, but I don't do things any of the way that anybody else does, which kind of sounds like David Fowler, I suppose. And so Safia came in and said, like, well, let's just open it in code spaces. And I was like, wow, that's actually kind of impressive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Huge fan of the code spaces.
Right. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let this VM start up.
Okay. Now, which VM?
This is a Linux Mint VM that's firing up.
Okay.
I don't know that it'll take a long time, since I'm doing a lot of things on the machine at once now, streaming and Visual Studio's going. So, although I don't know that that's making a big deal, but yep, VirtualBox is thinking about it. Super exciting. It's not going to be that small when it boots. It's just that it boots in a really small screen space, and I think, I'm not sure if this monitor is set to 4K right now, or maybe it's set to 1440 or something. I don't know. And then it finally says, okay, here's full screen. Great. And because this is a VM, I'm not super worried about the password. I mean, it was still masked, but you noticed it probably wasn't some long password.
Yeah.
You might be used to seeing from me. And head over to the terminal. And what we have here is, let's see, I do have source and I do have ASP.NET Core. What happened there? Oh, no, it worked. Okay, so I do have this. And then in order to, let's just see, I don't think I have .NET on this machine at all. So I don't even have .NET on this machine. I wonder if this should be a little bit larger, the font.
If you can, yes.
Yeah, there isn't, I don't know of a keyboard shortcut to do this.
Okay.
There may be one. So I actually have to come in and say like, well, let's try making it 32. Oh, it didn't do anything. That doesn't make sense.
You have to reload it.
I didn't think I had to. Oh, that's interesting. I don't have use system font on here. Well, what if I do that? Oh, but I can't. Oh, I see. You know what happened is I probably didn't say select here. There we go. Of course, now it's a mess. So we'll clear the screen. And then I remember that I have to do source. I have to say source activate .sh. Okay, enabled the .NET Core environment. So that's similar to what we had to do on Windows, except and I don't know why this is, and maybe there's a way to enable it. I'm not getting that little helper thing that I got in PowerShell. And again, I don't know if that says like, oh, don't forget you're in this redirected environment. But I do know that everything is working because I can hit .NET and it's like, yep. And I can say .NET list all SDKs. And it says, yep. Maybe it's list SDKs.
List SDKs, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, you have 8 going, and then what you can do is you can say, okay, fine, let's go to source, and let's go to HTTP, and then we'll just open code from here. That's all you have to do, unless I'm forgetting something. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I've had issues with is if I try to debug using .NET Core Launch, and I was trying to say, can I, yeah, get repositories. This is great. I was trying to tell it, hey, I really want, no, what are you doing? I really want it to launch the minimal sample, but I couldn't get that working. So, and I'm not sure why. Let's go look at this. So here's the minimal
sample is just the minimal API sample?
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, when I asked the C# extension to create a launch JSON for that sample, it did it, and it said like, hey, here's where it has to go. And then when you actually try to launch it, it says, oh, not found. And I suppose it could be that maybe this isn't lining up quite right. Like for all I know, it could have to go back one more. The workspace folder, maybe the workspace folder combined isn't quite it. I don't know. So, but what I did get working is that if I simply, let's see, what was it that I would do here? If I think I have to go back a little bit and say, let's see, I'm back in ASP.NET Core. There's this artifacts folder where things are being built. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure that this is all lining up quite right. But then in artifacts, I think it was bin, because you can even see it up there on line 13. I'm heading down the same pathway.
Yeah.
Minimal sample, debug, which I spelled wrong, and it is Linux. CDNet 8. And then we come in here and we see the sample. We see the minimal sample. So it's here. I guess I don't necessarily have to do this. The other thing I could do, now that I've taken that long trip, is I can go back to source and I can say ASP.NET Core, and then there's source in here, and then HTTP. And I think after this it samples. I probably could make this a little bit bigger. I just realized. I think samples is in here. Okay. And then the minimal sample. Now, because if I look in the minimal sample and I see a CS proj, I can say .NET run from here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to pick up the CS proj. I don't know that there's anything to build, though. I think it's just going to start. It does take a little while, and I'm wondering how much of that is because this is in a VM.
Right.
I don't know.
To the resources that the VM has?
I mean, pretty good. More than it probably really needed, but that was partially why I did that, is I'm trying to use it as a development VM.
Sure.
So, and, you know, in a graphical environment, whereas it'd be interesting to see what happens if that NeoVim work gets going. I don't remember this taking forever, but what I did is, since I couldn't figure out how to get it to launch from VS Code, I opened it and then attached, and that worked, and I was able to set breakpoints and look at things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that did work, which is nice. Like, that works. It's cool to know that that works. Doesn't help you, I think, doesn't help you too much if what you're trying to debug is it's harder if what you're trying to debug is really early in the program. Maybe it's something called from program CS.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that's impossible. Just means that you're kind of playing a little race condition game of like, can I get attached quickly enough?
Right.
So yeah, so it's firing up now. And if I go ahead and say start debugging, and it's like, well, what do you want to attach to? I think it was .NET Run that I wanted to attach to. I think so. I could be wrong about that. So it's attached now. And then I'll know that I'm right, because if I come into the source and I pick something, the breakpoint's going to light up. So let's see. We know about Hello World. Okay, so I think I've attached to the wrong thing again. So let's try. It was late last night. Was it that I attached to minimal API.dll? That might have been it. Minimal sample.
Mm.
And yeah, so now the breakpoint lit up.
Cool.
I'm not sure if it's finished loading. Yes, it looks like it has. I know that I have not properly trusted the developer certificate yet, which it's telling me. So that means I'm going to launch the HTTP version. And Firefox opens up. And in this particular minimal sample, if you go to the index, if you just basically go to index, all it really does is just splat back some information. But I set a breakpoint here on plain text. So let's see how the demo works. If I go to plain text, then that just opened right up. That didn't do what I wanted. So I know I've seen it, though. Like this one. Oh, see, I have the say hello one I've got right here. Say hello. It could be that, I think that you can't necessarily get into map gets, because I think, as we discovered, I think there's some source generator going on behind the scenes. So instead, let me then go to hello with my name.
Yeah.
Oops, I don't need to open another one. And I actually did this. I was curious if it still had it. Doesn't seem to. Oh, it does. It has my work from last night. And so when I try to go to that the breakpoint hits, because I think the reason the breakpoint hits is because map-get is saying, well, in order to finish this off, you're going to have to call say hello, and say hello is like, yep, I'm right here. You can, you can deal with that. And all we're really doing in this very simple function is just saying, well, the name Chris was passed in as a query string parameter, not parameter, but part of the endpoint, and then just take that and say hello, piece of cake. All I'm going to do is just let it continue. And if I go back, we're done. Everything works. Just
Nice.
to kind of prove, I'll switch to a name I haven't used before. It still hasn't completed, right? We're stuck on this breakpoint. Go ahead and continue. Go back to Firefox, and there we are. So I know I can work in Linux.
Yes. And debug and hit the breakpoints and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And we know that we can work in Windows. Now the trick is finding an issue, getting it assigned, working on it, and seeing if we can get it committed, which I think would be pretty cool.
Definitely. Yeah, and that may be something, we take a look at in between, and we can figure, kind of find an appropriate issue, and then come back and dig into it a little bit.
Yep, I think so. Oh, look at that. You have to yeah, you're right that I need a Stream Deck integration here, because it's like, well, turn this off and then turn the other thing off. It's all.
Yeah, there's a couple steps involved.
Yeah. So I think what I learned is that there is just as much a task of figuring out what issue you can work on and how.
Yeah.
As much as just getting the code built, which it's cool that it works, that I can run it and use it, and even it looks like develop against it in both Windows and Linux, which I think is helpful to a lot of people. But we need an issue now.
Yeah.
So
that's unless you have something in mind you want to put in as a potential issue, and then see how that floats through.
Yeah, I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'm at the point where certainly the people who are finding these things are working pretty, they're working with it every day, and they're saying like, hey, I feel like this should work a certain way. It's what the documentation's leading me to believe, or usage of similar things is leading me to believe, and so here's an issue. So I don't know that I'm there. But yeah, this is interesting. I really like the idea of figuring out how we start contributing to different things. Like, for example, we're going to contribute to everything you've done for the AZD template. Like, that'll be out there. I think that's a really cool thing to start doing. And I even hear that you're working on a talk about AZD. I heard that
has
somewhere.
That been posted yet?
No, I don't think so. I could be wrong. It might be posted.
I didn't see it posted yet. That's why I was asking, because
I don't know if you saw my reply, because I was trying to think of a decent companion, and as I said, well, I wonder if like Azure Container Apps would be a companion. So I may have to go ask.
There was, when we talked about, and this is a little insight for those who haven't seen or been to the Philly.net local, but basically we had a good conversation with Jason
Van Brakel. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't.
Yeah, he was just there last month.
Yes, and he ran through an awesome conversation with Kubernetes and AKS, and the conversation of ACA or Azure Container Apps came up, and I think there's a lot of interest. That it would be a good companion talk, because, and we could certainly say whatever is that I show on the AZD side, let's get it to deploy in container apps, and then you can talk through that part. So yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So that's Philly.net. A lot of folks who watch this show are aware of the Philly.net local community, and there is a lab posted for August. I don't remember the exact date, but I think
I'm trying to bring it up now. It is the 16th.
The 16th. Okay. Yep. So the 16th, there's a lab. It's Bill Wolf's talking about, I think it's more of a holistic approach, minimal APIs and Angular kind of together. You know how you build your whole application. And then in September, I don't know that it's posted, but there has been discussion of the Azure Developer CLI, which is exactly what we've been talking about on the show for a while. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we got to thinking about, after that talk on containers, at the end of it, there seemed to be there needs to be like a level setting between, hey, there's all these options. There's Azure Container Instances, there's Azure Container Apps, and then there's Azure Kubernetes Service. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So I sometimes by talking about one of them, we could kind of level set, like, okay, well, here's where this fits in between the other two. So
definitely. Cool.
All right. Well, I know that it's almost 9:00, and both you and I have early 9:00 meetings. And so if it's just about time for your stand up, then get over to that and enjoy your day. Once again, if you watch us on either YouTube or Twitch, you can hit subscribe or follow buttons right now to see next time that we're live here in the mornings. But if you watch this in the future on YouTube, let us know what you think. Add anything in the comment section, any of your experience with working with open source, how you search out for issues, and maybe get to know a large code base that you're unfamiliar with. Those are definitely skills for all of us, and we'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. Cool.
All right, Rich. Well, have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. And we'll see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.